In 2010, a coal dust explosion at the Upper Branch mine in the US resulted in the death of 29 miners, making it the worst mining accident in the United States in 40 years. Subsequent investigations revealed that the mine was plagued by a high-stress work environment, with employees pushed to prioritize productivity over safety. Miners were under immense pressure to meet production targets, leading to a disregard for essential safety protocols. The outcome was disastrous, resulting in a loss of life, extensive legal battles, and a tarnished reputation for the mining company. In 2012, a major trading scandal unfolded at finance giant JP Morgan Chase, resulting in a staggering $6.2 billion loss. The incident, known as the London Whale debacle, involved a group of traders who made outsized bets on complex financial derivatives. The subsequent fallout revealed a high-stress environment within the bank, with employees under constant pressure to deliver strong financial results and maintain JP Morgan's competitive edge. The intense stress experienced by the traders contributed to a number of issues, including poor decision-making, inadequate risk management, and a reluctance to voice concerns about the mounting risks associated with their financial positions. The high-stress environment within the bank also led to employee burnout and turnover, further undermining the organization's stability and long-term success. You might be wondering, why should my employer care if I'm stressed out? After all, companies have their own priorities, like hitting productivity targets and making profit. But it turns out that stress is more than just an individual issue. It's also a costly one for organizations. These two examples from vastly different industries demonstrate how unaddressed employee stress can have far-reaching consequences for both individual well-being and the overall health of an organization. It's not always the case that employee stress leads to industrial accidents or financial collapse, like in those two examples. The costs of employee stress are usually much less visible, but still profound. In 2011, a major report by Medibank revealed that stress cost Australian industries a whopping $27 billion per year. This staggering number comes from expenses like health insurance, disability claims, and lost productivity due to stressed employees needing time off or even quitting their jobs. And with the Mental Health and Wellbeing Act that came into effect in 2023, Australian employers now have a legally enforced duty of care to manage stress among their employees. Here's a quick overview of the topics we'll cover in this lecture. We'll start off by delving into the antecedents and consequences of stress in the workplace, focusing on three distinct burnout models. Next, we'll explore various theoretical approaches to understanding and explaining stress. Lastly, we'll discuss practical strategies that organizations can and should implement to effectively manage workplace stress. But first, what is stress? We all have some idea of what stress feels like, but it can be hard to define. In the early days of stress research, scientists focused on the physiological aspects of stress. Imagine you're face-to-face with a lion. Your heart rate skyrockets, your palms get sweaty, and your body releases cortisol. Your body is gearing up for the famous fight-or-flight response. Cognitively, you interpret all these changes as tension, anxiety, or nervousness. But as the study of stress evolved, researchers shifted their focus to the source of stress, or the stressor. What's causing all these physiological reactions in the first place? Interactional theories of stress looked at how different stressors combine to affect our well-being. Transactional theories view stress as a more dynamic process, and they focus on how we can react and cope with stress in the moment. Stress has been defined as the tension we experience from extraordinary demands, constraints, or even opportunities. Yes, even positive challenges can be stressful. A job stressor is an external demand from the work environment that requires us to adapt. It's the stimulus behind the stress. But if we don't deal with stressors, we end up with what's called job strain, the negative reaction to stress that can manifest physically, fatigue, psychologically, anxiety, or behaviorally, diminished performance, absenteeism, or even substance abuse. In fact, research has linked job stress to higher rates of drug and alcohol abuse. Have you ever wondered how much the time you spend at work affects your stress levels? The issue of working hours has been a contentious issue over the last couple centuries. Looking back to the late 1800s and early 1900s, people commonly worked 12 to 14-hour days, 6 days a week, especially in industries like manufacturing. Fast forward to today, and we've landed on the more familiar 40-hour work week, or even less in some countries. But what about those who still clock in more hours than that? Early research found that working over 48 hours a week could increase the risk of coronary heart disease. This finding was so significant that in 1993, the European Commission published the European Working Hours Directive, limiting work hours to a maximum of 48 hours per week. Later, large-scale reviews confirmed that longer work hours could have negative effects on both physical and mental health. Those who work long hours have higher risks of cardiovascular disease, dysfunctional family relationships, workplace injuries, anxiety, digestive problems, neuroticism, and alcohol and substance abuse. However, recent discussions suggest that the relationship between work hours and these negative outcomes may not be so straightforward. Some argue that the effect sizes are quite small, likely because these studies aggregate data from various people working in a diverse range of occupations. It's more probable that factors like autonomy, control, flexibility, and job complexity play a significant role in how work hours affect us. But the truth is that there's a lot we still don't know about how the amount of time we spend at work affects our mental health. And this is actually one of my own areas of research, where we're looking at how long work hours might lead to the accumulation of fatigue over time, which has negative outcomes down the track. Job stressors are those pesky factors that make our work lives feel overwhelming. Today we'll focus on 3 classic role stressors: role overload, role ambiguity, and role conflict. First up, role overload. Imagine being a barista at a bustling cafe during peak hours with a never-ending line of customers waiting for their caffeine fix. Your days are packed with brewing coffee, making sandwiches, and cleaning up spills, and there's never enough time to get everything done. That's role overload, a job designed in such a way that it's simply too much to handle. Next, we have role ambiguity. Picture yourself working at a cafe where your title is Cafe Assistant. But there's no clear job description, leaving you unsure of your exact responsibilities. Are you supposed to handle cashier duties, food preparation, or customer service? That confusion and uncertainty define role ambiguity. Lastly, we'll talk about role conflict. Imagine working at a cafe where you're asked to prioritize both excellent customer service and speedy order preparation. On one hand, you need to engage with customers, answer their questions, and make them feel welcome. On the other hand, you're expected to keep up with the fast-paced demands of a busy cafe. These competing demands exemplify role conflict. You're caught between 2 incompatible expectations. So those are some classic job stressors. Here are some consequences of stress, the types of strain that result from prolonged exposure to these stressors. At a personal level, prolonged stress can harm psychological well-being and physical health. For instance, you might find yourself constantly tired or even getting sick more often. From an organizational standpoint, stress can lead to decreased job satisfaction, job performance, and absenteeism, which is the tendency to be absent from work, and turnover, where people actually leave their job. So stress leads to negative outcomes not just for the individual, but also for the organization, which is one of the reasons why they're so interested in helping employees manage their stress. Lastly, there's burnout. Burnout is the chronic form of strain that results from long periods of stress. It's that all too familiar feeling of being completely exhausted from work, as if your motivation and energy has just vanished. Here are 3 classic approaches that aim to understand and explain burnout. First up, we have Freudenbrger and Richelson, who believe that burnout was similar to chronic fatigue, depression, and frustration. According to them, burnout resulted from engaging in activities that didn't fulfill the individual's ambitions and rewards. For instance, imagine a software developer who spends all day fixing bugs instead of doing the exciting work of creating new features. This situation could lead to feelings of burnout. However, the issue here is that this explanation doesn't provide any unique insight into strain, as fatigue and depression can stem from various other factors. Next, we have Cherniss, who linked burnout to depression and withdrawal behaviors. In this view, people experiencing burnout would become depressed and start to withdraw from work. Consider a cafe worker who feels overwhelmed by the high-pressure environment and decides to take more and more breaks to escape the stress. Eventually, they may develop an intention to leave their job. But we face a similar problem here. Withdrawal behaviors can result from factors other than burnout. Finally, we have Maslach, whose approach has become the most popular. He broke down burnout into 3 components: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and feelings of low personal accomplishment. Initially, this theory was designed to understand burnout in professions like nursing and teaching. Picture a nurse who's so tired at the end of the day they can't even find the energy to relax. To cope with emotional exhaustion, they might start to treat their patients as if they don't matter. They distance themselves from them, which can lead to a decline in job performance and a sense of not accomplishing much. This model has evolved over time to become more relatable. Depersonalization was replaced with cynicism, as anyone can be cynical about their work, regardless of their profession. For example, an accountant might become cynical about the company they work for, believing their efforts don't make a difference. The final phase was renamed reduced professional efficacy, a more accurate and fitting term that's directly applicable to the workplace. It's also important to distinguish between objective stress and subjective stress. Objective stress refers to the stressors present in a situation. For example, a warehouse worker might experience stress from lifting and moving a certain number of units each day. Another example would be the number of work hours someone has in a week. While objective stress can be easily quantified, it doesn't always provide a clear picture of how stressed someone actually feels. Subjective stress refers to an individual's perceptions of how much stress they're experiencing in a given situation. One person might feel overwhelmed by their 40-hour work week, while another person could be perfectly content with that schedule. For example, a busy event planner might perceive their workday as incredibly hectic with no time to rest, even if they're working the same number of hours as someone in a different job who feels far less stressed. It turns out that subjective stress is a more powerful predictor of human functioning than objective stress. This is because people have different work capacities, and jobs themselves can vary in terms of how demanding they are. When researchers study stress, they often focus on subjective stress as it provides a better understanding of strain and burnout. So how do the demands of the job affect stress levels? Recall the Minnesota theory of work adjustment, which emphasizes the importance of achieving a fit between the person and their job. This means that when a person's abilities and traits align with the demands of their work, they're better equipped to handle the situation, resulting in lower stress levels. Imagine you've got a part-time job as a barista. If the demands of this job are too low for your abilities, say you're only tasked with cleaning tables, you might quickly become bored, leading to psychological strain. On the other hand, if the job demands are too high, like managing the entire cafe alone during peak hours, you could become overwhelmed, leading to strain and stress. The ideal scenario is finding that sweet spot where job demands and abilities match, resulting in low strain and a more positive work experience. A meta-analysis by Kristoff-Brown and colleagues in 2005 confirmed that a good person-environment fit is negatively related to strain across hundreds of studies. Now let's connect this to the relationship between stress, or physiological arousal, and performance. The Yerkes-Dodson law of performance posits that both under-demanding and over-demanding work can lead to poor performance. Just like how goal-setting theory suggests that challenging yet achievable goals are motivating, stress operates similarly. There's a sweet spot in the middle where a moderate level of demand is beneficial because it's stimulating and engaging. For example, as a barista, you might find that making various coffee drinks, taking orders, and engaging with customers provide the right amount of challenge without becoming overwhelming. Striking the right balance is not only good for managing stress levels, but also for boosting performance. It's also important to recognize that not all stress is created equal. There's an important distinction introduced by the challenge-hindrance stressor framework. Challenge stressors are considered the good kind of stress. Imagine having to balance multiple responsibilities at once, like working part-time, studying, and participating in extracurricular activities. These situations can promote personal growth, trigger positive emotions like excitement, and encourage active problem solving. On the other hand, hindrance stressors are the bad kinds of stress. Think about unclear instructions from a professor or conflicting deadlines from different courses. These stressors have the potential to harm personal growth, evoke negative emotions like anxiety, and lead to passive or emotional coping strategies, such as procrastination or avoidance. The impact of these stressors on performance and satisfaction largely depends on the individual's appraisal of the stressor. For instance, someone who sees a demanding course load as a challenge may be more motivated to tackle it head on, while another person might feel overwhelmed and withdraw from the situation.